This video has taken a long time to make. In your time playing War Thunder, have you ever had the experience of picking up a plane that you don't really vibe with? Probably not too rare of a feeling, but that's not how I felt when I first got my hands on the Tunnan. You see, don't really vibe doesn't capture the depth of the discomfort this plane gave me. Game after game, I'd get shot down, or miss easy kills, or simply get outperformed by everything around me, and I'd be left angry. At one point, I remember saying out loud that I'd finally found my definitive least favorite plane in War Thunder, and it was the J29A. It just seemed like there was nothing going for this plane at all. Its acceleration is, frankly, terrible, on par with the F-84, and at 7.7 there's nothing that you can really outmaneuver, especially if you're caught slow. So it felt like dogfighting at this thing was just a death sentence, but with the low velocity of the 20mm and the weird placement of the guns below the fuselage, trying to aim and boom and zoom attacks was just as painful. After coming from the monster that was the J28B, I was just so frustrated. Like, in what universe is this flying beer keg supposed to be better than the vampire? But, despite how poorly I was doing in it, the stubborn part of me wouldn't let me put it down. This was Sweden's signature fighter for decades, their equivalent to the Sabres and the MiGs. So surely it had to have something going for it. And so I kept coming back. I'd spaded all the other Swedish jets I owned anyway, so I couldn't just leave this one out. And match after match, night after night, the Tunnan started growing on me. At this point, you see, I'd already decided that I hated the plane, but almost as if to spite me, that's when things started clicking. Now, it must be said that if you do own the A/J29B, there's no real reason to fly the J29A, since the B variant has a slightly better engine and a bunch of ordnance options at the exact same battle rating. But if you're like me and you're making a beeline for Tier 6 and the J35D, you might not research the J29B, so the A might be what you're stuck with. Despite everything that I just said though, knowing what I know now, I have to admit the J29A is not only viable at 7.7, it is competitive. You see, despite its rotund appearance, as Wikipedia puts it, this thing is fast. Like, really fast. 1,000 kilometers per hour on the deck fast. Granted, you won't get there most of the time because its acceleration is genuinely awful, but that kind of speed means that there's nothing at the Tunnan's tier that can run it down if it's at speed. Not even F-89 Scorpions. That means there is a sort of hard safety when you're flying the J29A in a down tier. As long as you stay fast, you have options. My mistake was trying to apply the tactics I used in the J28 on the J29. Don't. This thing is much more akin to an F-84 Thunderjet. But that doesn't quite mean you can't maneuver when you have to. Full disclosure, I wasn't exactly wrong when I initially said that everything can turn circles around the J29. That's still true if you end up committing to a low-speed dogfight. But the Tunnan has two things going for it that a lot of other planes around it don't, and those are very strong combat flaps and an excellent roll rate. That means that despite things like the Scorpion technically being better at turning than you can often make them overshoot fast enough that they won't have a chance to use that against you before you get a shot on target. And people really seem to underestimate this thing, just like I did when I first got it. The weaker air brake on the J29 also means that you have more fine-tuned control of your energy in a rolling scissors, which means that you can sometimes win dogfights against planes that you have absolutely no business beating in a dogfight, like Sabres and G91s. When it comes down to it, unless you have multiple enemies attacking you at once, the J29 is an extremely slippery target and you can stay alive against almost anything. If you were paying attention to my airspeed during that dogfight, you might have noticed the other excellent feature of the J29 airframe, its wonderful energy retention during maneuvers. I don't know if it's a consequence of its beer kegness, but this thing keeps speed very well during turns, so well that you often find yourself draining your opponents of energy without even really trying, especially in a down tier. This, combined with its high top speed, means you can save up a ton of useful energy just by flying in a straight line, and that is very powerful. Unfortunately, this last F-89 plays it a bit smarter, and I end up having to drag them all the way back across the map, where the game ends in a fiery collision between it and the IL-28 on my team, like 4 minutes later. So this wasn't an ace, and the one and only ace that I did end up getting in the J29 was me slaughtering A2Ds, which isn't exactly representative of its abilities. I do have like 3 other 4-kill games that I could show, but I reckon in this case I've already said pretty much everything I want to say, so it might be best to just let the footage speak for itself. Just let me get the music started. The J29A Tunnen is a bit of an ugly duckling. It doesn't have the good looks and panache of its contemporaries, and its performance lacks the obvious combat edge of the other airframes it competes with. But make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, this flying barrel is certainly nothing to scoff at. Thanks for watching.
Up to hell.